Welcome to the Asbestos Knowledge Empire.
What does asbestos management mean to you?
I used to really struggle with the asbestos management at my site, but now it's a breeze.
It used to be really expensive. I was paying loads, but now I've got my asbestos power team in place. It's so much easier.
Asbestos can be a pain in the arse if not handled right.
We had to stop the job because asbestos was discovered. Now we don't have that problem.
Asbestos management is easier than you think. Asbestos management. Be proactive, not reactive. Think about asbestos first, not last.
And now your hosts, best-selling authors and asbestos experts, Ian Stone and Neil Munro.
Welcome to the Asbestos Knowledge Empire. I'm Ian Stone.
I'm Neil Munro.
So today we're joined with Liz Darlison MBE from Mesothelioma UK. Morning, Liz.
Morning, gentlemen.
So, where should we start? Mesothelioma, it's an asbestos-related disease. We've harped on about it in our podcast many times. But I suppose we should kind of pick your brains on it and get the clinical definition.
Yeah, please do. I guess, so I should say that I can talk with a bit of authority about it because I am a nurse and I've worked in respiratory and mesothelioma for, a long time. So I guess it's the old adage with mesothelioma that people always think it won't happen to me.
Yeah, definitely.
A bit like smoking, people who smoke think I'll be all right, it never happened to me. And actually the damage you do in your early life, you do often pay the price later on with heart disease and lung cancer. It's exactly the same with mesothelioma, with the exception that often you've not made a choice, that you have been inadvertently exposed to sometimes very low levels of asbestos, maybe while you're at school or working in a hospital or working in an industry aligned with asbestos or construction. So very small amounts of asbestos can cause. Mesothelioma is the big daddy of asbestos diseases, I would say. So there are other health problems you can get from being exposed to asbestos, mainly affecting your lungs, all affecting your lungs. But mesothelioma is a cancer. It's a cancer of the lining of the lungs predominantly, although it can affect the lining of other parts of your body, such as your abdomen. And it is where the asbestos has been breathed in, worked its way in its indestructible form. As we know, the beauty of asbestos is how indestructible it is. Worked its way over many years to the edge of your lung, embedded itself, and that's where it's wreaked its havoc. And it starts off as a small cancer that spreads and spreads. So it's a cancer of the lining of the lung. Mesothelial cells. Cancers are often named after the cell type that they originate in. So it's cancer of the mesothelial cells, and mesothelial cells are found in the lining of the chest cavity predominantly. We have the highest incidence of this cancer in the world, shamefully, in the UK. It's the biggest public health disaster that our country manages, faces, and yet it goes unseen, I think, because of the years between being exposed to developing the cancer. So, often a younger person in their 20s and 30s exposed to asbestos and don't actually develop the disease until they're in their 60s, 70s or 80s. So yeah, that's mesothelioma. Lots of treatment available, lots of clinical trials. We've got some amazing experts in the NHS dedicated to this disease, but sadly it's not curable. And more than half of people will die within a year of being diagnosed. And if that's not a tragedy...
That's a shocking
fact.
Is,
yeah, it's horrendous. And, people seem to think this is a disease of older men, but, come and sit in my clinic and you'll meet a young nurse, a young teacher. And when I say young, I mean in their 30s. This is,
shocking.
And it is absolutely... It blows me away that as a nation... we sit on top of this highest incidence in the world of mesothelioma with doing very little to change the status quo. It is absolutely disgraceful.
Questions kind of just going through my head there about why is mesothelioma hard to treat or cure, basically? Because some cancers can be cured, can't they?
Yeah.
What's the particular issue with...
Well, I suppose in a way we assume that it's hard to treat and hard to cure, but... So if I said to you there are over 200 different types of cancer and the vast majority of research funding, and remember it's research that finds better treatment, and you don't find a magic bullet with diseases, it's usually small incremental improvements in patients' outcomes and experience of care that actually leads to a cure eventually. So it takes many years and millions of pounds to find a cure for cancers. So over 200 cancers. It's not surprising that a cancer like mesothelioma hasn't had the investment similar to, so if we look at lung cancer, where there are maybe, forgive me, you'll have to look at the latest figures, but 380,000 cases of cancer a year in the UK, thereabouts, maybe about 44,000 cases of lung cancer. So you can see, and actually lung cancer has been very poorly invested in compared to breast cancer. Yeah. So we probably have, I'm not sure, 48,000 cases of breast cancer, but it's a very high profile, younger patient, female, often more vocal. And, so it's investment in research. Yeah. And the more we learn about cancer, the more we learn about the genetics of cancer. The genetics can be very similar in different cancers. So what actually drives your cancer to grow, to establish itself and grow, and actually respond to treatment can be similar in different cancers. We're only just beginning to get to the bottom of that. So actually, what we are learning now is that discoveries in other cancers can be replicated in another cancer. So, for instance, there might be a bone cancer that has similar genetics to certain types of meso. Yeah. And when we see that happening in that bone cancer, we can actually replicate that in meso. But we still have to evidence-base that, because these drugs and treatments are toxic. So you can't just make an assumption and use it. You've got to set up a clinical trial. And even a very basic clinical trial, the very basic of clinical trials, 2.5 million. Us as a charity, we are the only mesothelioma national charity, probably in the UK, dedicated to just meso. We have spent on research since we've been in existence, maybe 1.5 million. We don't have, I would love, nothing would give me greater pleasure than to fund a research centre that is dedicated to meso. But that would take probably a couple of million a year to keep that running.
That's a huge ask, isn't it?
Yeah.
To get that initial money, to get it set up, and then to even just keep it running.
Yeah, exactly. So I've waffled on, but so basically we can't say that it is a resistant treatment cancer. It's just, we just need to keep plugging away at the research. And this year we've had some amazing, we've had new treatments licensed for the first time in 14, 15 years. And we took a hit through COVID, like all clinical trials. A lot of our trials stalled, paused, stopped, closed, but they're just beginning to open again. So we've got some amazing experts in the NHS dedicated to the disease. So we're not going to find an answer overnight, but we're on the right path. So we're heading in the right direction, and more funds, more research would really help us with that.
Just going back to a couple of points you mentioned earlier, I think it mirrors what Neil and I say about it's a disease that everybody kind of thinks isn't going to happen to them. They think they're going to be all right. Everybody thinks it's a thing of the past. Asbestos is a thing of the past, and it's not. And it's interesting just to hear you mirror those kind of sentiments. And the other thing as well, the problem, if you like, I've said this before with asbestos, is you don't get that initial, I've been exposed, now I'm going to die thing.
No, exactly.
And the way that I kind of explain it to people, in the UK, there's licensed industries. Asbestos is one of them. So's nuclear. So's working with explosives. Now, explosives and nuclear, if that goes wrong, people die instantly.
Oh my gosh, and wouldn't the papers be covered in it?
Exactly. But because you don't have that initial reaction from being exposed, even though it's still a licensed industry, I really struggle with kind of getting that over to people and making them think, well, I should pay attention to this. I mean, you mentioned women in their early 30s that have had no construction background whatsoever that are facing this as an issue. It's shocking.
Well, when you look this morning on the news, and yesterday we've heard about this tragedy in Philippines or Indonesia, the football stadium.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Huge coverage.
Huge coverage. I mean, it's a tragedy that should never have happened. There is absolutely no excuse. There will be inquiries. I mean, the papers will be covered in it today. That many people die every month in this country, and more, and some, through asbestos. And yet we struggle to even get a little bit, in the back pages of anything.
It's crazy when you compare, like you said, lung cancer's up to 45, 50,000 a year. It's mesothelioma, 2,500, asbestos disease, just over 5,000 a year, what the stats say. When you compare it and you think, oh, well, 5,000 is not 50,000. It's still 5,000 people.
Yeah.
That's the size of some of the football club stadiums.
Yeah.
People passing each year, a football stadium-sized event of people passing. It's crazy.
Avoidable. That's the issue.
Yeah.
It is an avoidable cancer, and it is a cancer that should never have happened. You know, asbestos isn't found in our soil naturally. We imported all of it, put it in all of our buildings. Then when we realise it's dangerous, we'll leave it in those buildings. And do you know what? Nobody really checks. Nobody really checks if we look after it properly. You know, we're relying on people's conscience and people, you know, wanting to, you know, or maybe they've had a brush with an asbestos disease or whatever. But yeah, we absolutely turn a blind eye to it. Yeah. And it's not until some tragedy affects you closely that you actually people start to actually think, oh yeah, maybe I should do something about this. And, you know, like, I just think people should come and spend a day with me in clinic and just one after another, just see the people that I see that actually 20 years ago, 30 years ago, maybe 40 years ago, very casual exposure, a proportion, never even knew it was dangerous. Yeah. Some of them did and just, you know, thought,
I'll be all right, Jack.
I'll wing it.
Yeah.
I'll wing it. And yeah.
So how, over the years, has the types of people changed at all, would you say?
So I would say yes, definitely. The numbers have gone up considerably since I started out. So it was 2002 that I first did the grant application to start Meso UK. We were called the National Macmillan Mesothelioma Resource Centre then. And again, you'd have to look at the stats, but I guess we were around 1,500 cases a year in the UK at that time. So we're now at 2,700. Yeah. So the numbers have gone up. And a lot of the epidemiological predictions thought that we would reach a peak over 10 years ago. And, you know, we went way past that.
Yeah. That's what we keep saying.
Yeah. When we started in the industry, sort of similar time, 2001, 2002, that was it. It was kind of 2010 was going to be the peak. And after that, the figure's going to drop off because it's a thing of the past. Everything's being managed. It's all right. But yeah, we're way past that.
Yeah, and way past that.
10 years, way past that.
A decade.
How did you get those figures wrong?
And well,
a decade out.
The model clearly wasn't right. Yeah, the model clearly wasn't right. But, you know, so the rates continue to increase. Definitely the age of people affected has increased slightly as well, maybe from average age of 70 to 73, 4, and that's gone up very slowly. The rate in men has slowed, or the rate of increase each year in men has slowed. So the industry-related incidents, clearly, I think there is a correlation there, but the rate in women has continued to increase. So the overall rate of increase has slowed, but we still have gone up year on year, and it's the women numbers that have driven that. And here's the thing, though, the epidemiological studies, I think, have predicted that we would reach a peak and then it'd start to drop off. I'm not an epidemiologist. I'm not even a great, you know, maths is not my thing, if I'm honest. I think it'll flatten off. I think we'll stay at these numbers for quite a number of years because the people that we are seeing in the clinics are people who've had casual, low levels of exposure. And just common sense tells me that we haven't changed anything to manage our asbestos hugely. And it's still in the buildings. People are still getting that casual exposure. You know, we're seeing doctors, nurses, teachers, secretaries, or people who've just had one-off exposures. So that tells me that it's probably going to stay until we enforce what you people do and mandate it more so that it is policed better, or until we do something to rid our buildings and just raise public awareness and public knowledge more. I don't see that things are going to change too much.
I think that's huge with what you just said, just the type of people that you're seeing and the increase in types of people, because I think if you ask anybody who's got half a clue about asbestos, what's the poster boy look like for mesothelioma? Everybody would say construction workers that were heavily exposed, 60s, 70s, 80s, men, Yeah, and that was it. Whereas what you're saying is the complete opposite. It could be anyone.
Yeah.
And I think nobody realises that. Everybody thinks, well, I've never worked in construction, I'm all right. But it's clearly not the case, is it?
Oh, no, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I think, I mean, anyone can just Google asbestos exposure and you'll see big high street names have exposed their staff.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see the issues about it being in schools. You'll see the issues about it being in brake linings. So, you know, sadly, I mean, we put a lot of money, I think, into regenerating the UK after the Second World War.
Yeah.
So the 50s, 60s, 70s, mass building work, schools, hospitals, housing, all of those council housing estates, prefabricated council estates, Bethnal Green. Every city's got a Bethnal Green kind of thing. And they're still there, you know. So it's no wonder, really. And why people don't wake up and smell the coffee is just, like I say, it blows me away.
There's a council not too far from here. They exactly that. They built post-war bungalows for people. Literally, I think they were meant to be up for 15 years. They're still in use today, 2022, and essentially they're constructed out of asbestos.
Yeah.
Temporary housing.
Yeah, temporary housing.
Yeah. And they've wrapped them in nice brick facade. They've probably put in some nice new windows. They might have even, I don't know, had the walls skimmed. I bet they've put Artex on the ceiling. There's another story. But the bottom line is, if someone moves into one of those and puts a new kitchen in, my husband's a carpenter and joiner, and, put a new kitchen in, you're drilling into the walls or even putting pictures up, a new radiator here, or it doesn't matter, does it? Whatever you're doing.
Simple little things.
That subtle release of fibres from those asbestos boarding walls that might have been wrapped in something, still in the core of it. So those fibres are going to come out. Do
you think the only way to kind of rid this problem is to get rid of the asbestos? Do you think the kind of the way we're managing it at the moment under the regs of leave it in situ, as long as it's in a good condition and it's not damaged, then it could be managed? Do you think that's working, or do you think we do need to kind of go for a phase removal approach? Or
I think I'm not somebody who looks back and likes to think about the blame game or anything like that. I think we just have to accept, as a nation, this is where we're at, and we need to change the status quo. I think the only way to deal with it long term is to get rid of it eventually. But I recognise that that's not going to be done in 1 or 2 generations. We probably need, a 30, 40 year, 50 year plan to be able to get there. But I do think that's the only way to do it. I think that we need to mandate the surveying better of asbestos, because we need to know where it is. We need to let people know about the dangers, make people more aware. And then we need to have a national task force, a government-led national task force that uses all of the experts, people like you, people like me, the people that have died, families of people that have died, so that we can put together a long-term strategy for managing asbestos. And there will be money needed, to back it. But this is lives we're talking about. It's not.
It's over 5,000 each year dying from asbestos disease in the UK, and that's 5,000 this year and next year and the year after. And it's like, where, like you say, where does it end?
And not only the tragedy of it and the human suffering, but for people who need to see figures and money, every one of those people is entitled to state benefit, state compensation. They may be entitled to civil compensation that goes through the legal system. So we're talking about millions of pounds worth of money out, and treatment. Some of the new treatments we use at the minute, we're talking about £10,000 a month for some of these treatments. So if not that you should put a price on any of this, but for some people that is a language they understand better.
Exactly, and if that is the language, cost. Exactly, because ultimately some people only see the facts and figures, don't they? And I mean, those figures alone smack of, well, something could be done better. At a time when NHS is on its knees and it's struggling, well, we're spending all of this money. I mean, ultimately, prevention's better than cure. So the only way to prevent exposure is no asbestos.
It's a bit of speculate to accumulate situation again, isn't it? We've spoke about that before, that you just need to put some investment in now, and then longer term, the costs associated to our asbestos tragedy will start to diminish as the numbers start to go down. But the numbers won't go down unless we change the status quo.
The problem for me, I think, is the regulations that we've got. They work in a perfect world. So if asbestos isn't exposed, it works. However, us as a consultancy, for the last 20 years, day in, day out, week in, week out, we are going to sites where somebody has damaged asbestos. Somebody's been exposed to asbestos. And that's the problem. It only works if everything's perfect, and nothing's perfect. There's breakdowns in systems, in communications, in people's own knowledge of what they're doing. So again, it's kind of, it works, but it doesn't.
And that's only if they're doing it as well.
Yeah, exactly.
There's lots of work that needs to be done in enforcing these regulations as well. Because, we spoke just before the podcast about the regulations for identifying asbestos have been in place for 20 years. And yet we still go to places where no register has ever been done.
It's just shocking, isn't it?
It is.
And that will be today. We'll be going today to a place where it's never been surveyed, which is unbelievable.
Well, I mean, we should be raising the public's expectation level. If they knew more about the dangers of asbestos, every parent should be asking a school,
what are you doing?
Does your school contain asbestos? Yeah. Have you got an up-to-date register? And how do you manage asbestos? Because that would definitely put pressure on, schools to manage it more effectively. Yeah, I meant to speak to the team behind the UK National Asbestos Register, because the idea about that is that you have the unique identifier code and people can scan it and then they know. But maybe we should be getting all of the buildings that are safe and don't contain asbestos as well, because I know they do have that as an option. Yeah. And our offices are asbestos free. They were built after 2000. And I've said to the team, we need to have something on the outside of our building to say, this building is asbestos, the asbestos, the A sign, this building is asbestos free. It has been surveyed and has been deemed, because maybe by celebrating good news and positive buildings, that might raise the level of expectation. I don't know.
Shines a light a little bit on the ones that are not saying.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe we're just approaching it
the wrong way. Yeah.
Approaching it. Maybe that's what we should be doing. If that's a safe building, I wonder if that one's not. Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that the policing of it could be better, and the conversation about it could be better.
Yes.
It's a taboo subject. Nobody talks about asbestos. Whenever we have meetings, it's always behind closed doors, and go and have chats with people, and it's like, shh, don't mention it to the staff. I don't want to get them worried. Whereas it should be the opposite, and that's what we try and promote, is if you get things sorted, have your register, get the asbestos straight, then tell people. That's the only way that you've then got half a chance of it being managed. Yeah. I think that's a very good addition to that, of highlighting the facts.
Yeah, celebrate the good. It's a bit like parenting, isn't it? You try and not look at the naughty things your kids do, but you really give them lots of praise when they get it right, don't you?
Yeah, exactly.
So, and interestingly, Meso UK, we were invited to do some presentations, and I'd like to say here and now, we'd be glad to go into any organisation or company and do some asbestos and the diseases it causes, chats and so on. But anyway, we were doing that for a big national company, big national landlord, and I got invited to their head office in London, central London, to their health and safety meeting, where all of their contractors came so many times a year for health and safety meeting. Mm-hmm. And I sat through these meetings, and in one of these meetings, we must have spent 40 minutes talking about managing falls from height. And I just thought, I never knew that was such a problem, falls from height. And I looked up the stats while I was sitting in this meeting, and I can't remember what they were, but I think there was 90 people had died in the last year or something. I can't remember now.
It's a hell of a lot less than. And
I was like, do you know that 2,700 people are dying through asbestos this year in this country? And you don't even have any idea what I'm about, and yet you're spending high-powered corporate top head honcho people talking about preventing fall, but that's instant, and it's probably younger people, instant, and there's a big compensation associated to it potentially. So we've got it wrong somewhere, that we just keep brushing asbestos and the disease it causes under the carpet, and
there is a big focus on those types of projects, because they have figures of how many injured on this project? None. How many people have been exposed to asbestos on this project? We don't know.
No,
that's the
exactly
thing.
Yeah, exactly.
It's because it's that instant feedback from other stuff, which is the issue with asbestos, isn't it? It's
For your staff that listen to this podcast, I'd like this opportunity to say to them, don't ever underestimate how important what you do is. Don't ever underestimate, because actually doing what you do and doing it well is saving lives. There is absolutely no doubt about that. You're probably not aware of that. You probably don't think about it, but actually doing your job and doing it well, and to your customers, please congratulate them on actually doing what they should be doing, because so many people are not. Inadvertently, well, that may be the wrong choice of word, actually negligently exposing individuals to asbestos. So don't ever underestimate what you contribute, because you're at the front end of the journey, meaning that people like me will have less to do, hopefully, further down the line.
That is a really good way of looking at it.
Could we just kind of just take a step back and just talk about sort of symptoms of mesothelioma, what kind of to look out for, or, you know, when should somebody be worried about it?
Yeah, of course I will. So I'm going to talk about plural, so chest mesothelioma rather than abdominal, because the numbers outweigh by about 9 to 1, really. So chest mesothelioma, or pleural mesothelioma as we call it, it's pretty much similar to any chest complaint. So if we think about asthma, emphysema, even collapsed lung, mesothelioma is very typical of all of those. That patients often present with breathlessness. That's the most common sign that they have. And for most, it will be quite a short history, maybe several weeks.
I was going to say, like when's the kind of trigger point for, is it somebody that's kind of been slowly getting worse over a number of years, or is it's a quicker...
It's usually over weeks, I would say. And the lung function is a funny thing, really. Lung function, I mean, you have a few hundred litres of capacity in your lungs, and as we age, that capacity diminishes. And, you know, with age, you would naturally reduce to probably 2/3 of your normal lung capacity. But it's actually just losing a few more mils that can be the straw that breaks the camel's back. So you can function really well on reduced lung capacity, but just a slight loss more is the straw. It can make the difference between you being able to get up the stairs without having to stop and actually not having to stop, if you see what I mean, or being able to run for the bus and not running for the bus. And that's usually what happens. It may be somebody who, golfer, 18 rounds of golf, and I absolutely am gasping on that one that's got a slight incline. And yet I've been doing this every day, or it might be running up the stairs, or it might be somebody's a walker and I've walked the hills at the Peak Districts. And so that's the kind of thing. So I've noticed that I'm more breathless. And that's
fine, not fine.
Yes, not fine. But I'm 50 odd or 60 odd, and maybe I'm just getting a bit old, or a bit of paunch because of, after Christmas I've ate too much. That we're very good, all of us. It's our human nature to think,
kick the can down the road. And...
I'll be all right.
It's my fault, something I've done, I'm getting old, that kind of thing. So that's a very typical, but then it often then can be associated with cough. So the breathlessness is still there, but that's because I smoked all the while I was younger. I'm a bit overweight, or I'm a bit this, or I'm a bit old. But then I got a cough. Maybe I've got a bit of a bug coming through COVID. Do a COVID test, And for some people, it may be as well that they start to get a bit of pain in their chest, a bit of rib pain, I've got a bit of a twinge. I must have pulled a muscle when I was laying them slabs. And I'm talking about kind of the scenario that is very male-dominated, because it still is a male-dominated disease. But that's the typical picture. And it's often a nagging wife that will, you got to go to the doctor, keep me awake, bad enough for you snoring, never mind you coughing, that kind of thing. Eventually go to the doctors. And, a good consultation, very open and honest consultation with a GP will hopefully result in a chest x-ray. And in 8 out of 10 people, we discover they've got some fluid in their lung that should not be there, in their chest cavity. So that's a typical scenario. And that will then lead to a CT scan and drainage of the fluid and a biopsy. But as you and I know, often it depends very much on how long it takes you to get to the GP. When you get to that GP, it depends what you tell them, because we're very good at saying, I've got a cough. I'm sure it's nothing. I'm sure I'm all right, because you want the doctor to say, I think you are all right, don't worry. Actually, what you should be saying is, I'm worried. I've been a smoker, yes, but I have worked with asbestos and it keeps my wife awake. That's how, that kind of thing. So, but we are very good at feeding our GPs what we want to hear back. So I think lay it on the line, honest consultation, and a chest x-ray costs, hardly anything. So there is no excuse really for not going and getting that chest x-ray, which is often what can, 8 out of 10 patients have fluid in their lung, and we pick that up. There can be other causes of fluid in the lung. So I don't want everyone to think the minute I get a bit of fluid, my chest cavity, but against a background of perhaps, asbestos exposure, or that we always will be on the card, especially in this country, because asbestos is everywhere. So that should always be on the cards. So that's the typical kind of scenario.
And then kind of leading on to that, what happens next?
So usually if there's fluid in the chest, we'll, depending on how much, we might drain a bit off to make somebody more comfortable, because the pain and the cough and the breathlessness will improve quite drastically once you take that fluid away. Until you do something to prevent it coming back, it will often come back. But quick drain the fluid off, CT scan, and chest x-ray is just 2-dimensional. CT scan is, flat on your back, and we take slices of them. And it's usually that, then we can then start to see the asbestos scarring, the signs of asbestos in the lungs. It has a very typical, it's much the same as, I don't know, we all get to know in our own industries what's a sign of bad management with a car, for instance, or whatever. So you kind of see the signs. So the changes we see on a CT scan can be very typical of asbestos damage. And of course, we also need a biopsy. And usually a biopsy involves having a camera put in through the chest, through the ribs, under a local anaesthetic, so you're not put to sleep. And we can drain the fluid off, put something in to stop the fluid coming back, and take some samples. Whole process should take weeks, but that's usually. And once we start to see signs of asbestos on a CT scan, it's usually then we'll start that conversation. Can you tell me what you've done for a living? We're seeing signs of asbestos on your chest x-ray and on your CT scan. So that's the typical scenario.
But the outcome of that is most of the time then people dying within 12 to 18 months.
Yeah, sadly, we do. I mean, there's always a lag. We've had new treatments come online in the last year or so. So we're hoping we're going to see some benefits of those. But yeah, absolutely. So about 60% of people, sadly, will die within a year of being diagnosed.
That's crazy. And again, those kind of things people need to hear, take on board from a young age, and not think it's not going to be me, because it could be one day. From any industry, it's kind of, you need to really look after yourself and what you do, and not put yourself in those situations.
I mean, it's the same reason why we're advised not to smoke. We're advised not to drink, too much alcohol. We're advised to keep check on our weight, exercise, rainbow diet. It's all about cancer prevention. Well, if you think about it, one of the best things you can do is don't get yourself exposed to asbestos. That and smoking. I mean, smoking's the biggie.
Well, there's no benefits, is there, to anyone? Somebody might enjoy a cigarette, might enjoy a drink. There's no enjoyment in being exposed to asbestos.
And you make that choice. We make that choice to carry a bit of extra weight, or to sit on the settee rather than going out and doing a bit of exercise. That's a choice thing. With asbestos, there is no choice, because the only known cause is exposure to asbestos. So for mesothelioma, and it's not just that the survival's really poor, it's at the sharp end of the wedge in terms of a nasty cancer. It's nasty, breathlessness. Can you imagine? No. Debilitating cough, pain, chest wall pain is like, most people fear toothache, and that's because you've got so many nerves in your mouth and your jaw that toothache is a nerve pain. You've got a lot more nerves around your chest cavity, and so it's like the worst toothache you can ever have in your chest. So it's a nasty, nasty cancer. So, and not only are you going to have to navigate the healthcare system in a very short space of time, you're going to have to navigate the benefit system, because there's a shed load of benefits you might be entitled to. And we all know that writing forms for anything that's government related is just going to be a headache. And then the final system is the legal system, because you may be entitled to civil compensation. So 3 things that we all feel, all of us, with dread: the healthcare system, the benefit system, and the legal system, all within your last year of life.
I suppose there's the family element as well, the will getting your estate in order, because you kind of go from living a normal life to facing your own mortality very quickly at the drop of a hat. And it's, the mental stress that would cause as well must be shocking.
And above all, it's just sad.
Yeah, of course.
It's bitterly, heartbreakingly sad. A tragedy, really.
So is the treatment more sort of palliative care, sort of making people comfortable than?
So we use the term palliative to describe any treatment that's not curative, really, not curative intent. So absolutely. But many treatments are palliative, they're not curative, but they can give you survival benefit. And what we tend to do is try and stack up the palliative treatments one after another so that they can each have some benefit to you in terms of your quality of life and the length of your life. So, I see patients often who have had maybe a bit of surgery, a bit of chemo, a bit of immunotherapy, a bit more chemo, maybe a bit of radiotherapy. Then we might have given them a bit more. So a targeted treatment. So I have patients that have had 6-7 lines of treatment. We call it lines. So yes, they are palliative. They're not curative, but the aim is that we keep firing something at it to lengthen your life and to keep your symptoms minimum. And we can only keep giving treatments if people retain their fitness. And so not only are you going to be doing all them, the healthcare system, civil, competent, we want to keep fit as well, so no wrapping him or her in cotton wool. Right. They need to get out and they need to be walking and, get yourself a dog so you've got a reason to get out. Yeah. So yeah, it's tough.
So I suppose what does that effect have on families as well?
Just
because I've seen some photos and some pictures of, mesothelioma patients, and it's not a nice sight, is it?
I think that's cancer, if I'm honest. So cancer, really, any cancer in the latter stages is a parasite, on the human body. And so you get the local effects of a cancer. So with mesothelioma, it's the cough, the breathlessness and chest pain probably. But then you get, with all cancers, that parasite effect, that systemic effect on the whole body, which is the malaise, weight loss. And it's that you're talking about. Yeah. So, and I think, death and dying and losing somebody, if you think about COPD or emphysema, that's a much longer demise, really. But it's still, is the dying process over a much longer period of time. So I don't want to, we've all got to go some way or another. And I don't want to make death and dying more of a taboo subject than it already is. Losing somebody, doesn't matter how you lose them, is sad. That parting is sad. And mesothelioma is no different to any other grief or anything. It's probably just a faster journey, if I'm honest. So mesothelioma, when you see people with mesothelioma nearing, their death, it's not that dissimilar to other diseases, really, or other cancers. Yeah. That's the effect of cancer. And 1 in 2 of us will get cancer at some point in our life. So
still a shocking fact,
it is shocking. Isn't it? But a vast majority, a lot of patients obviously have curative cancer. But so, yeah, it's just, it could have been avoided. And it's just, a very fast journey often is, the tragedy of it.
So Mesothelioma UK provides nurses and shares knowledge. What other things does the charity do? So
I think one of the things that's quite different about Meso UK is we're completely embedded in the NHS. And I think that's because it was set up by clinicians and we're still very clinically led. So, the chair of our board is a very well-known and respected respiratory physician. We've got 2 other equally really respected physicians, and we've got this team of 30-odd nurses all working at the coalface of the NHS, and they're described by other people as a tour de force, really, and they really are. They're absolute beacons of expertise in mesothelioma who are dedicated to raising the standard of treatment and care and access for anybody affected by mesothelioma. And they wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Meso UK. It's the biggest cost for us. In England alone, there are maybe 3,500, 4,000 cancer nurse specialists, lots of breast cancer nurse specialists, lung cancer nurse specialists, lots of people people understand when I say that. Yeah. Macmillan nurses, there would be none for Meso if it wasn't for our nurses. And, we just feel very strongly as a charity that when you walk through the doors of your NHS, it doesn't matter what cancer you've got, you need to know that the people there are experts. And if they're not experts, that they can signpost you and get you to the experts. And that's what we're about as a charity. We're about being there for when people need it and making sure that our amazing NHS is available to everybody and anybody, even with a rare cancer. Because we're sitting here in Northampton, we've got Kettering just down the road and Corby not far away and Peterborough. You can't have experts in a disease like meso in every NHS centre. It's just not possible. It's just unrealistic. If you have, I don't know, a Maserati car, you're not going to take it down the road to your local, but we need to know where the experts are. And all we're doing is shining a light on that. And as a charity, we will help fund that. So if people need to get to an expert and they don't have the funding to fund transport or overnight accommodation, we will fund that as a charity. We have an app, for instance, that we keep updated daily if necessary on clinical trials. So if you're a patient with meso and you want to know where the expert clinical trials are, get the app and we'll help you get there. And of course, we do loads of education and training. So healthcare professionals, you achieve your expertise and retain it through contact with patients with that disease. And if you're not getting that contact, it's really hard to keep yourself up to date. So we focus on keeping healthcare professionals up to date, but more importantly, being there to support them when they are faced with a patient with meso. So a healthcare professional can contact us and say, oh, I've got a guy coming in this afternoon, he's this, that, and the other. What do you recommend? And we would say, there's this trial, there's that trial. Have you thought about this? Make sure you talk about benefits. Another thing with anybody who dies of an asbestos-related disease, it's not a natural death. They all have to be referred to the coroner when they've died. And it's really important that the family are aware of that because it can come as a big shock.
Because it puts delays, I suppose, on
and it's just, it sometimes can feel like the final insult, when coroner rings up and starts asking all sorts of questions about your mother's death or your dad's death or whatever. So, and it's all those kind of things that we try to, the uniqueness, the quirky things about having an asbestos disease like meso, that we try to iron out and just really hold the hand of those, affected. So we're everything and anything to do. We're absolute, we're passionate about awareness and prevention. So we're just a bit of a one-stop shop, really, for everything related
That's
to.
amazing.
Yeah,
absolutely amazing what you've done and what everybody does and you've achieved. It's
That's kind
fantastic.
of you to say. Yeah, it is kind of you to say.
What can people do to help the charity? If anybody's listening that thinks, right, I want to get involved, I want to do something, what can they do that's going to help?
Well, first of all, we're very grateful. And I think, as I've said, we are completely loyal and dedicated to the NHS. So I don't think you'll find a better charity because it's actually, supporting services directly at the point of need. I think the most important thing is sign up and connect with us. So you can do that through our website or pick up the phone and ring us and just connect with us so that we can communicate with you and let you know about things that are going on, things that are happening. If you're in the asbestos industry in any way, shape or form, asbestos management industry, invite us. We've got 34 nurses, all anoraks about the disease. So use us as those clinical experts. And then, without doubt, we have loads of fundraising opportunities. A lot of the opportunities that we put out there for fundraise are great team building opportunities as well. And so for your organisations to bring the team together with a sense of purpose in something aligned, I think, we really welcome you to do that. So again, connect with us so we can communicate with you, but it's about funds. We, like all charities, it's a slog to raise money and it has got so much harder through COVID. And, we are really struggling to sustain what we've already got in place. And we've got ambition to do so much more to make the NHS better than it already is for people with meso. So it's about, spreading the gospel, connect with us, hear what we've got to say, spread the gospel about awareness and all the rest of it. But please fundraise. Think about us of, payday giving or company's charity of choice, team building challenges, anything. We'd be very, very grateful. And we'll do our absolute best to connect with you as well, because I think don't ever underestimate what you do as an organisation, because you doing what you do saves lives. So, we want to invest in you as well. We can't invest in you financially, that's inappropriate, but we can invest in knowledge sharing and becoming more of a community and more of a team. So use us for that purpose, because that's teamwork, really.
No, definitely. Well, we'll put all the details and contact links within the details of this podcast, so it'll be there for everybody to easily get in touch. Definitely.
Yeah. What does the future look like for the charity and stuff? What are your ambitions and
Oh
and
my
goals?
gosh! So without doubt, I'm definitely, and as an organisation, we are a glass half full, blue sky thinking. So we've got 34 nurses, I think now. We probably need 45 to have the whole of the country covered geographically.
Yeah.
We would like to see more specialist clinical teams across the country. We've got Scotland covered, Wales is being sorted, and Northern Ireland. England's a bit of a mishmash, so we need investment for that. And clinical trials are really important. Yeah. So, we already have our own research centre that focuses on more awareness and patient experience, but we'd love to run clinical trials. And that is, maybe a million a year we'd need to invest. So ideally, we'd be a charity with an income of 3 or 4 million a year. We're currently about 1.2, 1.3 million. Right. So that's where we'd like to get to. Yeah. Honestly, for the next couple of years, it's all about income, sustaining where we've got to, because we haven't got the income currently to sustain what we're already doing for the long term. So it's all about that currently. But outside of more of the same, I would say it's definitely clinical trials, research, and getting more clinical experts across the country. And we have a plan. We have a clear we've got an idea of how to do that. So it's pretty sad that we haven't got the income. But yeah, we're in it for the long haul. We're not going anywhere. We've got a great team of trustees. The ops team, are fabulous. So we're on a mission, but we've had to slow our timeline, I guess, really. Just might take us longer to get there. And I'm getting old. I don't want to work till I'm 70. So, but I've got good people around me that I know will carry it all on if we don't get there by then.
No, that's amazing legacy. That's good.
Yeah, we're definitely banging the drum.
Yes.
for the charity.
Yeah, I'm grateful for that. We're very grateful, and yeah, it's good. And thanks for inviting me down today. It's lovely. I'm going to have a nice tour. I've never been into a lab, so I'm looking forward to that.
Just one last thing, obviously, MBE.
Yes.
Do you want to tell us about that?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And how that was and how that felt. And I'm
a very loyal person, so I'm mad Leicester City fan because that's my hometown. But I'm also very patriotic, and so it was just phenomenal to get that letter.
Was it complete surprise through the post?
Yeah,
so you opened
went
it.
to my old house as well because I'd moved. So it was, the person who bought a house officer said, "I've had a letter come from you, and it's got Her Majesty's service on the front." So I said, "Oh, I wonder what that can be." And then she said to me, "What is it?" And I can't remember what I said to her because you're not allowed to tell a soul when you get that letter.
Okay.
So it was amazing, and you get 3 tickets to go to the palace. I managed, but you can request more, and I've got 3 children and my husband and my mum, and so I managed to get extra tickets. So 6 of us went. We drove through the palace gates, which was an amazing experience in itself because they had to part the crowds and all the rest of it. And when we got to the gates, they did we pulled up at the gates, and there's all these, armed police officers and all the rest of it. And they said to my husband, "Wind down the window." And we went to pieces. Couldn't remember how to wind the window down. I couldn't remember. What? We were just like, and they do like a sweep of the car, open the boot, and put mirrors under the car and all the rest of the car. And the head police officer at the gates leaned in the car window because we had opened it by then, and he said, "You've got Her Majesty. You'll be pleased to know." Well, we were blown away because I think
she didn't know until that point.
I think we were probably the last investiture before she stepped down, really, is from doing them at all. So by then she was rotating them with Charles and William. Yeah. But so it was Her Majesty. And my mum, my mum's nearly 90 and she's completely independent, but there was quite a lot of walking that day. So I told them that she might need a wheelchair, and they assigned a footman to her for the day. And the family went one way, I went another. Because my mum was in a wheelchair, they were on the front row, which was amazing. And it was fabulous. She has 2 equerries either side of her, one of them giving her the award and the other one giving her a little briefing in her ear. But bearing in mind how old she was in her 90s by then, and she was right on it and said, "I understand you're a nurse and you work in the NHS." And I said, because they tell you have to curtsy and say Your Majesty the first time, then it's Mom after that. And I said, "That's right, Mom." And she said, "And what is it you actually do?" And I said, "I work with people who are affected by asbestos and they develop a cancer." And she leaned forward and she said, "My dear, this place is riddled with it." And I said, "I know, Mom." And I said, and I'm sad to tell you that many homes in the country are riddled with asbestos. Unfortunately, it's a legacy that we have to live with. But, you know, there are lots of us on a mission to change that. And until that time, nurses like me will be needed in the NHS because we have the highest incidence and da. And my husband and family said to me, Mum, of the 50 people that went through that line, she spoke to you longer than anyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She was really interested and really engaged. So, yeah, it was fabulous. My kids are all grown up and adults, and one of them was living abroad and two were, so we were all together the night before, and even just being in a hotel together and we ironing my boys' shirts, getting ready for, it's just fabulous. So the whole thing was amazing, and I'm extremely proud and very, very grateful.
You should be.
I felt like I took it for the team though,
Yeah.
Meso UK is a big team, and so it was fabulous, and I feel very, very honoured. And to have my mum there and my kids and my husband was just fabulous even so.
Fantastic.
Yeah, wonderful.
Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, it was wonderful. Yeah. Feel very proud and very lucky. Thank you for asking me about that.
Well, thank you very much, Liz. I think that's been, just an amazing chat. There's so much information there that I think people from the industry who think they know about everything, they're going to learn a hell of a lot from what we've discussed. Like you said, there's massive insight.
We often feel like when we're saying this sort of stuff is in the back of our heads, people are thinking, yeah, you would say that. But actually to get, on the cold face facts and the cold face experience of what this material's done to this country and is doing to people.
And why we all do what we do.
Yeah, exactly.
Why we all do what we do is because of this dreadful, avoidable tragedy. So, thank you.
I appreciate that.
Thank you very much. So, if anybody does want to help out and get in contact, the details are on the podcast. Please do. I think it's a fantastic cause and it needs to be supported.
I agree, but I'm biased.
Thank you very much.
That's it.
Thank you.